The officer's hand clamped down on the old man's arm, his grip cold, firm, and public. "You can't park here," the cop barked, his voice slicing through the murmurs of the airport crowd. "You're under arrest." Colonel Raymond Holt didn't flinch. His weathered hand, still resting on the faded leather of his flight jacket, trembled, but not from fear. The airport's curbside bustled around them, indifferent. People watched, but said nothing. They passed by as if the quiet humiliation of an old man in a parking zone was just another footnote in their busy lives. "Move along, folks." Airport security, the officer ordered, tightening his grip, but Raymond's eyes didn't follow the crowd. They drifted toward the sky, where the low rumble of a distant jet stirred a memory long buried beneath years of silence. Beneath the worn patches on his jacket, beneath the silver streaks in his hair, lived a man who had once carved the skies. With roaring engines. A man who had led his squadron home through gunfire, who had tasted the thin edge of life at 30,000 feet. But none of that seemed to matter here. Not to this young officer, not to the impatient crowd, not to the system that now measured men by meters and parking meters. "Sir, step aside, or I will use force." The words echoed louder than they were spoken, sharp in the cold morning air that a bystander whispered, "It's just an old man. Let him go." But no one intervened. Raymond's hands were steady now, folded calmly in front of him. His silence was not surrender, it was a fortress, the kind built by men who had faced storms far greater than this. Decades ago, Raymond Holt had been the kind of pilot stories couldn't capture. He flew medevac missions through enemy fire, pulling soldiers from battlefields where angels feared to tread. He had buried friends, saluted empty caskets, and learned to carry the unbearable weight of those who never came home. His left knee still ached from a crash landing. His lungs still burned on cold mornings from years of breathing jet fuel. But of all the battles he had fought, none had asked him to beg for dignity on a sidewalk. His wife, Eleanor, used to meet him at this very curb, waving that bright blue scarf so he could spot her in the sea of strangers. She'd been gone 5 years now. Today, he had parked in the no-standing zone for precisely 2 minutes to step out and touch the brass plaque outside the terminal that bore her name. It had been placed there by the Air Force to honor her volunteer work for returning soldiers. 2 minutes. That's all it took for the world to forget who he was. The officer called for backup, annoyed by the old man's stubborn silence. "You think wearing that jacket makes you untouchable?" he spat, his voice cracking with impatience. "The law's the law." Raymond looked past him, his gaze anchored somewhere the officer could not follow. The silence stretched until the unmistakable sound of synchronized boots approached. Point 4 Air Force officers, crisp in their dress blues, emerged from the terminal. Behind them, 2 generals walked with purpose, their eyes locked on the scene unfolding before them. Travelers paused, phones lowered. The air shifted. The first general stepped forward, his voice calm but carrying the weight of every star on his shoulder. "Is there a problem here, officer? This man is obstructing airport security." He refused to comply. "Colonel Holt is not a security threat," the general interrupted, his eyes like steel. "He is one of the few men still standing who flew the Blackbird over hostile skies. He is a decorated war hero, and he is family." Silence enveloped the terminal entrance. The officer stumbled, his grip loosening. I didn't know." "That's the thing about real heroes," the general said quietly. "They don't wear it like a badge. They carry it like a scar." Raymond didn't say a word. He simply tipped his head, a silent nod that spoke volumes. The officers surrounded him, not as guards, but as comrades. Slowly, deliberately, the general reached for Raymond's hand and shook it with both of his own. The gesture wasn't for show. It was an anchor in the sea of fading memories. "Some debts," the general whispered, "are never repaid. But we remember." The crowd, once indifferent, now stood in silent reverence. Strangers bowed their heads. Some wiped tears they didn't fully understand. The young officer lowered his eyes, his voice barely audible. I'm sorry, sir." Raymond finally spoke, his voice gravelly but firm. "Son, respect is not a courtesy. It's a duty. Remember that." It was a line the crowd would later repeat on social media, in coffee shops, in homes where old war photos gathered dust. Respect is not a courtesy. It's a duty. As Raymond was escorted to his car, A second general quietly paid his parking ticket, not out of obligation, but as a gesture of something far greater. Justice had not roared. It had whispered that in a world that too often forgets the silent battles fought by ordinary heroes. This one was remembered. If you've ever met someone whose story deserved more than silence, tell us where you're watching from in the comments. Share your thoughts. And don't forget to subscribe for more stories that honor the quiet strength of real heroes.